So that's our theme for tonight, is focusing on the National Crime Victims Week and the message from OVC. The OVC is the Office of Victims of Crime. I'm waiting to see people in the chat. I haven't seen anybody say hello. I'm a little surprised. Usually we have more discussion on the side. Bali, are you trying to ask a question? Paul, can other people, are they unmuted?
I just gave the ability for everybody to.
Okay. Yeah, we're just kind of, so usually we have somebody speak for about 10 minutes, and this time I used the video instead of having a speaker. And then I thought we could have more of a discussion about some of these things that are crimes that we don't often think of as crimes. And let me start by saying, and maybe, sort of recognizing the fact that there are an array of things that happen in the workplace that could be crimes, and every state and municipality, whether it's a federal or other jurisdiction, is going to deal with crime victims in a different way. And we've been having lots of discussion lately over a case at the Department of Veterans Affairs that involves sexual harassment. And maybe this is sort of a good example for me to start with, because everything got handled by HR and nobody talked to any of the victims about their rights as crime victims. So they were being harassed, stalked. They had their PII invaded, which meant that, people now knew where they lived, and there was pornography involved. So where they live, I asked if anybody ever told them, like, well, wait, you're a crime victim. Has anybody talked to you about your crime victim rights? How do you make a decision about whether or not you want to go to the police and report this to the local police? In other cases, these could be, and maybe Paul can help me out on this one a little bit. Some of these crimes are cyber crimes. You're being cyberbullied, you're being intimidated. Again, your information is being compromised, or you're being doxed and your private information is being shared publicly. Can you go to the FBI? They have, oh gosh, it's called the ICC, I think, or the IIC, an internet crime system where you can go and report these kinds of crimes that cross state lines, that involve the use of the internet. Some of these things are crimes as well. So it's multi-tiered. Sometimes it's the crime you report, like safety violations to OSHA, IC3. Yeah, there it is. Paul found it. Sometimes you are reporting crimes, but you're at this. But in turn, when we start talking about the retaliation, you can also become a victim of crime. And I'm hoping that's clear. And I know Bali's been waiting. I just kind of wanted to give a little bit more of an explanation about what we're going to talk about tonight before we started to really dive in. So Bali, go ahead. You need to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I was just trying to say that we were muted and that we couldn't send chat messages. I was just trying to tell you that because you were inviting people to contribute and we actually couldn't contribute. So that's what I was trying to tell you. Okay.
All right. And I also haven't seen anybody in the, is the chat working? I see Paul's posting stuff in the chat. So if you haven't, oh gosh, and if you haven't said hello or introduced yourself, we always ask people to go into the chat. I know sometimes people want to preserve their anonymity because of the world we live in, but we're also here for peer support. Even though we do record these, we do put them on our YouTube channel. so that people could watch them later. We try to, and you don't have to use your real name. You can make up names. I've seen plenty of interesting made up names. I just think that when we start talking about these things, that it's helpful for us to be able to hear from each other and connect as well. So, and I'm hoping we have some police officers that have joined as well, because I would love to hear from them and their perspective when we start talking about these things as crimes. If anybody is there and wants to join, I'd love to hear from you guys as well. So just kind of moving along with a little bit more about what is OVC. And we've kind of shared some of the resources as well, so that you guys can see a little bit more about the OVC. And when we post the video, we'll put the National Crime Victims' Rights Week. We'll put that information out there as well. But we wanted to make sure that people were aware that they have these rights as crime victims. It's a decision, though, you still have to make, because as we know, with retaliation, it's tricky and it's complicated. Not all the time does going to the police feel like the right thing to do. But sometimes if you've got concerns about your safety, the security of your home, the security of your family, children going to school by themselves, that's when we really think it's helpful to get law enforcement involved and make a disclosure to the authorities. And like I said, it could be your municipality, your state, or even the federal government. They investigate crimes. And what a lot of people also don't realize is that if you are like a federal employee and you go to the Office of Inspector General, the OIG is also authorized to do crime investigations. And I know some of you probably heard me talk about Bruce Sackman. He's the author of the book Behind the Murder Curtain, and he investigated medical serial killers as an OIG, as a special agent for the office, the VA office of Inspector General. And he was able to do that. Now, he ended up, of course, before they could bring charges and really move the cases forward, he ended up working with the municipality and with the FBI, because the VA hospitals are still federal facilities. So there are options of where and who you can report a crime to. And again, it might take a little research, because in every municipality, we have to really understand what is a crime and what might be investigated, and where can you get help, where you can get an order of protection. Like if somebody is stalking you or harassing you, those are the things that local law enforcement can help you with. Is it can help you start to create a record. And obviously, if somebody is really harassing or menacing, is destroying your property, is trespassing on your property, those are all things that you can report as crimes. And we have had a case that we've worked on where somebody knew that somebody from work was following them, was stalking them, and they were able to get an order of protection. And eventually, I believe he was arrested for trespassing on her property. She was able to get to, call the police when she saw him out there. She had the order of protection. Everything was in place, and he was arrested. So there are some opportunities there to hold accountable the perpetrators, although, again, HR is not likely to tell you those things. So I've talked for a little while. I'm not seeing anybody in the chat. I'm very surprised, because usually we have a whole side conversation going. Does anybody have anything they want to contribute or discuss? I thought, Liz. Liz is new to us, so, let's see, Liz, are you unmuted? Can
You hear me?
Yes. Oh, now I can. Yes. Hello.
Hi. Well, I wanted to echo Bali. Actually, none of us have access to the chat. So that's one of the reasons why. Oh, here I am.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Yeah. So yeah, you might not be getting any messages because we're not able to write in there.
Let everyone, well, it's turned on. Let everyone send messages.
Oh. Now it's working.
Oh, okay. I shut it off and I turned it back on. Well, thank you. All right. Well, hopefully that solves. I was feeling a little like, what's going on here? Where's our people? So, Liz, do you want to say hello? No.
Sure. Hi, my name is Liz Bullen. I hopped on this call because I have been a victim of assault of epic proportion to the point where I don't even know where to start. And has encompassed all kinds of things. A lot of it's been cybercrime. It's also been assault in the street. It's been almost like someone has tried to go through a list of crime and try every single one. Piles of symbolic trash, secret speak. They've completely hijacked my career. I've been put into all kinds of programs for recertifications. It's at one point they even tried to, I think, and a lot of this seems to be in the name of covering for crime or for assault. I guess they're always looking for a cover story, right? It's a lot easier to get away with, clearly, than I ever thought. So I mean, I've got I turned in about 60 pages to the court in California before, being assaulted out of there, and more things have happened to me where I am now.
No, it sounds like it's been a lot. So I appreciate your sharing that. So what happened? Did you go to the police? Did you report to the municipality?
Yeah, I've spoken to pretty much everyone. I've gone through a lot of channels at this point. I've even escalated to the FBI, Homeland Security. I contacted IC3. I have spoken to the police. I've spoken to human rights organizations. I've spoken to HR managers. I've spoken to EEO teams, human rights. I've really run the game. I've spoken to, lawyers, and it's been wild in not a good way. And so I guess my experience as a victim has been extremely, I mean, it's already, as you started off this conversation saying that it's already difficult to be a victim. And I think we tolerate, we generally tolerate a lot. So by the time you finally just go and make a claim, you're already at your tipping point, right? I don't think I don't know, at least for me, it really took a lot of abuse for me to start to formalize the complaint process.
Right. Yeah, because it's a complicated process too, I think. I mean, and it's not intuitive unless you are a lawyer, you work in law enforcement. These are unique systems. And I think that we we as whistleblowers, again, and HR isn't going to help us with this. HR doesn't want us to go to the local police and file a complaint. So what do you do? And how do you find out what to do is something that, as an organization, we were talking about this when we saw the National Whistleblower Week was being National Crime Victims Week was announced, and we thought, well, we at least need to have this conversation, because honestly, I can't say that I have all the answers sitting here for what crime victims should do, but I think we need to have the conversations and maybe come up with ways to strategize this a little bit, because it sounds like you've tried to cope with being assaulted at work, not knowing where to go, going to all these resources, and sometimes these investigations can take months, years. You don't get any feedback while the investigation is ongoing. So it leaves you feeling more vulnerable and more frustrated.
No, I mean, after I started making complaints, and I don't want to hijack the conversation here, by the way, I know a lot of people have. The retaliation has been wild beyond anything. I mean, I have really, really been hit very, very hard. And they have completely destroyed my life. The complaint process is, for me, in my case, it seems to be more pipeline to abusers than it is to resources of aid. I called a couple tip lines. I've called a lot of people, but in some of those, I called hotlines and then was assaulted trying to connect with resources. I've been basically blacklisted from work and, from remunerated pay. I've been put through all kinds of character discovery, trying to assess if I'm credible as a witness of the crimes that have happened to me. All of this seems to be at my, this is my life too. Like, it's my time. All my money, like, here I am. I'm like, this started because I was getting assaulted or things were happening and I reported them. And now I'm just basically become a monkey of the system itself. And I'm now like 5 or 6 years in, and I feel like my life is now hijacked to become a testing ground on which the DOJ is trying out legal theory.
Yeah. Well, and so I would love to talk to you more one-on-one about your case and what's going on. I see Ted has his hand raised, so I'm going to turn it over to Ted for a few comments. And Liz, you and I definitely need to connect because I don't think we've talked yet. But sure. Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, Liz, if you could come back on and turn your mic on.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah. No, where is it? I didn't catch. Where are you working?
I'm not working right now.
Okay, where were you at?
I've had episodes at a number of places.
Okay.
I hesitate saying too much out loud.
Okay.
This is being recorded, so we're trying to keep things, I guess, off the record a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay. I understand, Liz. So, just a couple comments, because boy, you sounded like you've really exhausted a lot of contacts and resources. And one of the things I didn't hear, and something that I had done, I'm a VA whistleblower, and basically, all my efforts ended up getting congressional legislation actually through Congress that passed to hold the VA accountable for the issues I raised to be rectified. But along the way, the reason I had the success with that I did, not so much on the retaliation end, because I didn't use these resources for that purpose, because the retaliation is a whole different thing than a cause we're out there to fight for. But in my battle, what I did is I employed political action, my politicians, and the news media in tandem, in sync with one another to really get attention. And when I did that, people took notice. Sometimes, that's kind of what you have to do is get media involved, get interviewed, contact your local or national politicians, or whatever level of government, you were working in order to get them engaged in the process and be very well documented in what you do. That's what I did. And it's a process. I mean, it took me almost 6 years, from the time I started until the legislation actually got passed. And I too, excuse my language, but I got my ass kicked along the way. And I'm a retired Marine and combat veteran. And I will tell you that it was more traumatic for me than any combat experience I had. So that says something, because the level of betrayal and the moral injury that goes with it along the way. And so one of the things that's really important in that process, and I didn't do up front, which is one of the mistakes I made up front, is I didn't really attend to my own self-care the way I needed to and regulate, what was going on, build the proper support network, because I had, kicked off as a Lone Ranger, and that just made it more brutal because I was out there alone, as the lone wolf, doing this thing. And so you always want to build a network of support and use resources that you can to help you with your emotional, mental, and spiritual healing in this that gets damaged along the way. Whatever resources work for you. That's something I could talk about a whole other time. But those are the things I found important along the way, and I wrote a book about it called Broken Promises that's out there. And besides the issues I addressed, I also addressed the impact. What specific tactics were used maliciously and intentfully? And Jackie has a great book out there she co-authored with Martina Buck about that exact same thing through surveys of whistleblowers. It's well-researched, great documentation for lawyers and whistleblowers to use to get compensation when they, file a claim and everything, that identifies these tactics. And I piggybacked off that, used that language in my book. This is what they did to me. And oh, by the way, this is the impact it had, because it is brutal. And I wrapped up with a blueprint on how to take on these kinds of causes, most effectively with the most favorable outcome possible. I mentioned a couple of them, and there's more, but that's, that being said, self-care, getting media and politicians involved to kind of, move things further along the road.
Ted, thank you for that. So one of the police officers who I thought was going to be able to join us tonight, he unfortunately had a conflict and he couldn't be here, but he sent me a note and he said, before people become or before people file complaints about crime being committed, they need to have a conversation with their families and make sure that everybody is really ready for this. Because it's not like you file a complaint and then everything is done, right? Filing a complaint just means now you've entered a whole other legal sphere that has court dates and lawyers and depositions potentially, and it can get complicated. That is where there are these, each state, so OVC funds in each state, these crime victim, whether they're state agencies or nonprofits, they fund these organizations that are supposed to be able to help crime victims get through the court process. And I mean, that's something that I wish we had more openly for whistleblowers. I've asked Congress, like, okay, so you've got crime victims, and crime victims very often focus on sexual assault, sexual abuse kinds of cases, domestic violence cases. There's also the Violence Against Women's Act. So there are other types of jurisdictions that sometimes these crimes fall under, but we don't have enough of those resources for whistleblowers. Does anybody else, where am I? Hold on, see what else is going on. Does anybody else have a comment? I see we're starting to use the chat, yay. So happy to see everybody starting to connect with each other. So I don't know, Ted, if you're seeing, Navone has said that she's been reading your book and she looks forward to chatting with you. So hopefully the two of you are connected offline as well. Because I think you're both VA employees or former VA employees. And Bali is awesome always about posting resources in the chat. We should hire her. She does this every time. And she's great at pulling up the resources. So thank you, Bali, for doing that. Anybody else? Don't make me call on you. I know you're there. We have some lawyers that have joined. Where are my? I saw one of my police officers join, but no, I don't see him. I'm scanning. Does anybody have any other questions that they might want to raise? All right, Liz, go ahead.
I don't want to hijack the conversation.
Well, no, we're a small group tonight, so this is a good time for us to get to know you a little better.
What might a positive outcome look like, and how long does it generally take to get one?
Well, so I hate to sound like an attorney with that depends, but very often these cases can take a while. And what I always tell people, though, is before anything else, you have to own your own narrative. You're in charge of what you think your outcome is. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the courts say. Like I took my case, it took me 5 years, and I ended up being pro se, and what I think is truly a miracle, I won my case. But Ted, who also went through a lot of retaliation, he decided not to. I don't think you went through any of the OSC process, OSC, MSPB. You didn't do any of that, right? You went right for, I'm going to make change happen. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. So I actually did have an EEO process that went forward. I missed a couple deadlines. They don't give you much time to respond to things, obviously. That's another thing you have to be aware of, which I wasn't up front. And also, before you take anything on the cause and or pursuing EEO or Office of Resolution Management or any kinds of retaliation action, you want to make sure you get legal counsel, you get some kind of legal advice before you ever do a thing either way. Again, something I did not do up front too, and I learned the hard way. So that's kind of really important too. But I did go through that process, and it just, I looked around, and I didn't take it to the level of the appeal. I said, "Oh, I'll let the agency make the decision," and they made the decision. I didn't appeal it to the the OMPB or the MPSB or whatever that is.
MSPB.
Yeah, thank you. Right, I get all confused. And I just realized, with my particular case and having talked with other people that were in similar cases, I honestly didn't think I really had a strong enough case that was really going to go there for different reasons, kind of because of how things sort of played out for me, even though, there was a lot of retaliation, legitimately something should have happened, but people even had stronger cases than me ended up, Zippo. And it doesn't mean, don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean don't go for it. You should, if you can, for validation and vindication, if nothing else, at least you won't wonder what if, just for having gone through the process, even though, the statistics aren't that great. Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think roughly about only 5% of people who have such cases really have successful outcomes
it can be low.
Yeah, it can be low, but that doesn't mean don't do it. Just get legal advice up front to do it right, so you don't have any missteps. Take care of yourself, and whatever you do, like the blueprint I offer in my book, the 2 big things: be well documented, or 3 things: be well documented, have get the media and politicians involved in both legs of the process, both the cause you're fighting for and retribution for the retaliation.
Yeah, I think that, so, as especially if we're talking about crimes, very often we don't think we need an attorney. We think we're going to be represented by the organization that we filed the complaint with. And I hate to say it, but that's not usually the way it goes. I didn't talk to an attorney. I would say I was at least a year into my complaint. And then when I was communicating back and forth, and we're government, so it's a little different. I was communicating back and forth with OSC, and I asked her a question, and she said, "Well, I can't give you that kind of advice. You need," and I was like, "Well, do I need an attorney?" And she said, "Well, you should consider one." And I was like, all this time I thought she was my attorney. I was so shocked that I knew so little about this process, and it was a real wake-up call for me. And that's when I thought, oh, I have to get really smart about this, because I've walked into something really blindly and not knowing, and I was, for certain they're going to see that these things are so clearly wrong and it'll all be fine. And it was, boy, I didn't have a clue. Bali, I see you're waiting again.
Yeah, actually, the call dropped. My internet is very unstable, so the call dropped. So I don't know who was talking while I was lost my internet connection. But I just wanted to say to Liz, it sounds like you've contacted everyone imaginable and that kind of stuff. But if you haven't read the literature on whistleblower retaliation, or the DARVO page, the deny, accuse and reverse victim and offender stuff, it might be helpful not only to you personally to know that this is what happens to everybody that reports any kind of, crime or violation or whatever, where the person that you're reporting it to doesn't want to hear that. And it's just it's a phenomenon, it happens to everybody. And it can also be helpful to you in talking to your friends who have not had this experience, because until you've gone through that experience, I think some whistleblowers might even sound kind of crazy to people that don't know what's happened to them, but then when you connect with other whistleblowers who've all had this experience, it makes it easier for you, and it helps, other people understand what you're going through and maybe be supportive of you, because obviously you need a lot of support. This is really stressful, situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I put my email in the chat, because Liz, I don't remember if we've talked, but if certainly you want to reach out to me, you can send me an email. We can set up a time to chat as well. But I think one of the reasons we do these monthly roundtables and we pick topics to discuss, but really because it is kind of our way of connecting with community once a month and having a group, and hopefully you feel the love. Does anybody have any other thoughts, comments, questions? So again, please look at the OVC website, find the resources in your own area too. I think that's important. Where are we? Next month is, I don't know that we have finalized a topic yet. I've got a couple of OSHA type safety managers that I'm hoping that we'll set up something for on OSHA. We have a couple of other speakers and topics that we're trying to line up. We've announced we've partnered for in June. Let me see if I can get all this right. June 11th and 12th is the conference in Athens, Greece. So if you're interested in doing a little traveling, there'll be that conference in June. July 30th is National Whistleblower Day. And then, of course, our conference, we've already started to announce our conference for September 12th and 13th. Thanks to the American Legion, we'll be in Washington, D.C. at their headquarters. And I think I just saw, Navon, your hand go up. No, maybe not.
Oh, the next month's roundtable, national security is under attack.
Okay. All right, we will definitely work on some of that. I thought I saw some hands going up. Oh, George.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. I'm
Well,
very excited that you joined us.
this is my first time with you, and thank you for sharing your experiences. I lived some time in the United States. I did my master's degree in the States. Now I'm in the UK. And I want to share with you that what you are living is so common. I am from Chile in South America. I defend clients, whistleblowers, and the retaliation and the narratives are so similar that you are telling. And the bad thing that we are, and I want to tell you that maybe you have some legal campaign or any ideas with the, because we are transplanting your laws to our countries. And one of the main problems is that your laws only consider vicarious liability. It means you only can go after the employer, the company, the organization, but not against the people, the actual people who is carrying out the retaliation. There's no individual accountability. I don't know if you have any thoughts, any plans, campaign, or something about that, because I think this is very difficult to stop retaliation if the wrongdoers, they know the company is going to be liable, not themselves. I think this is the same problem they have in Europe. Also, the law in the UK is quite similar, that we are not finding accountable the actual individuals that they are carrying out the retaliation. That should be a part of the whistleblower international campaigns. We have to make them accountable, not only the companies.
No, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I often post a lot about accountability matters, and there are things for the federal government. There are fines and fees, and there's something called the judgment fund, but there's not a lot of enforcement of that, and rarely do we see where those that are perpetrators are personally held accountable for the wrongdoing. The case we've been dealing with at the VA, a few of the perpetrators have now been terminated. So, I mean, that is probably the boldest thing I've seen in a long time, especially coming out of the federal government. But I agree, and I'm very excited. And I think we're supposed to talk this week about Whistleblower Chile, which is the organization that you founded to address some of these issues, correct?
Yes, we are trying to create awareness in Latin America, because whistleblowing, we don't even have a word for whistleblowing. It is not even a legal thing, a category or cultural thing. So That's
Yeah.
the reason I'm attending your meetings, because I want to understand how you think about this and how we can make the cultural transplant to, because we have whistleblowers, but they don't know they are whistleblowers. That's terrible
Yeah.
because nobody cares about them.
Right. Yeah. So interesting, because I had a conversation with Carlos Yasco. I think he's in Peru, and we were talking about how in Spanish there aren't good words for whistleblower. It can be informer, denunciator. I forget the other one, but he said it really depends what country you're in, the words that get used for whistleblowing as they translate into the Spanish.
Well, this is true. That's the first
Yeah, that's the
cultural
first problem is you don't
barrier
have
that we don't even have the word.
Yeah, words matter. We need to be unified in this. But I'm excited that you joined us tonight, because I know it's got to be pretty late where you are.
Oh yes, quite late, but
Can I ask for clarification on what you were just saying, George? Do you mind? When you say that companies tend to not hold the individuals accountable, is that because a disciplinary action is an admission of guilt, and an admission of guilt might open them up for compensatory, I guess, rewards, or that they would have to engage in admission of fault, or what is it actually within these institutions that makes them so hesitant to engage in that disciplinary action? Is it on their record? What are they not? Are they trying to get out of paying money? Or are they trying to get out of a stained record? What is it actually that why are they doing this?
well, it seems to me, after years of studying the designs of the law, it's a problem of the law. The law is designed, is drafted in a way that you can only, for example, if you're a victim of retaliation, you can only sue your employer. It's very exceptional that you can also sue the perpetrators, because that's the design of the law, because you are fighting against your employer, not against your colleagues or the managers that were involved. That usually is if there was a crime or a criminal thing involved, you can prosecute them individually. But I think to be changed is, for example, blacklisting. That should be something treated as like a sort of crime, and someone that is involved in that should be found individually accountable. Because right now, all these legal things, we know those things exist, but we don't have legal tools, and nobody cares. The perpetrators, they know there's so little chances to find the evidence to prove that someone has been blacklisted. So, for example, creating a crime that can have a deterrence effect. Nobody is going to get involved, I think, or is there less chances if they know that it's a crime.
And that they're going to be held accountable for such crimes.
But right now we don't have that.
Not just by HR, but by the courts. And so I think you're spot on. I mean, we actually call it anonymous immunity. Perpetrators get away with it because they have this immunity, because they remain anonymous. It's the organization that has done something wrong, not the individuals. And we see where some individuals work for some of these same organizations for decades and decades, doing some of the same stuff because they get away with it. And, it's easier to cover up the crimes than it is to hold them accountable for it.
Well, that's very true. It's a good concept you have, these anonymous perpetrators. That's the right way to present them, and we have to do something about that. I am no, I'm trying to create awareness in the whistleblowing community that should be part of all best practices. There's very sad, for example, the European Union in their directive, they don't have a specific thing about this. And I think all countries should be put some effort in the perpetrators, not only in the vicarious liability of the employer, because this is very vague, because it's like nobody's really accountable.
Right. Yeah. When everybody's responsible, nobody's accountable, I think is a Russian expression. Ted, did you want to join in?
Yeah, just real quick. I know we're getting close to end time here. George, I really appreciate you bringing up about personal accountability as opposed to agency accountability. That's something we don't really think about. And quite frankly, it's been off my radar. In the United States, the federal government, federal employees have special protections, which, is not a good thing, because the individual was held accountable. They're going to think twice as an individual about retaliation, for one thing. But the flip side of that is the individual then also, who is the retaliator, could get thrown under the bus by the agency if you go after them individually, because the agency, big and powerful, they're not going to want to be accountable. So so they're going after you. Okay, so they'll do whatever they can, even if to save themselves as an organization, to throw the employee under the bus, and maybe, which is why there is federal protection for perpetrators, but there shouldn't be, because at least if the individual is accountable, they would think twice, and the agency would think twice if the individual wasn't protected, because they're going to be liable for what the individual does. So that does need to change. I agree. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I think we do have a coalition that I work with. We are looking at some of the, like, where can we get these legislative fixes completed? So when we work on some of these things together, we have discussed like the lack of accountability on behalf of the perpetrators. And even though there's like on the books, there are these fines and fees for the judgment fund, very often those monies, in the US, it's called the No Fear Act. Hardly any of that money ever gets collected, especially from agencies like the VA. One of the biggest offenders are also the least likely to pay that bill. And I think, go ahead. So I think the problem with them not being held accountable is first of all, the judgment fund belongs to the Treasury Department. So there's not a lot of incentive from the agencies to collect money that they then have to give away. And I think it's also, I mean, there's just not a lot of teeth behind it. When there's contracting fraud and company A complains about company B, and there are these contracting improprieties, they pay those bills, but they're not paying this judgment fund. And I mean, that's been one of my pet peeves that I'm sure some of the attorneys are tired of hearing me bring up, is that we need to get people to at least be paying their fair share into the judgment fund. And even that's been hard.
How is the DOJ being, what does their accountability structure look like if they're reporting numbers? I mean, maybe I misunderstood, but I heard a number like 5%. I mean, that's basically just tokenization.
Well, that's not the justice. So and I think some of us on here have been federal employees, and we went through a federal system that's separate from, like, we don't go to court like regular district courts. Most of the cases that involve whistleblowers go through this MSPB, OSC type of adjudication, and that's where the wins are really low.
Okay. Thank you.
Bali. I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that one thing that's different about the United States compared to a lot of other countries is most other countries, and maybe even Chile has this, Jorge, I'm not sure. Most other countries have a right to civil counsel. You know, like in the United States, if you're accused of a crime, you have the right to a public defender. But that's the only time you have the right to a lawyer in the United States. So you know, that's one of the things that I would love to see changed for whistleblowers is expanding the right to civil counsel to anybody that needs an attorney who's a whistleblower, who doesn't have the money to hire their own attorney. Because I think that not having access, you know, to an attorney, you know, and then you get embroiled in these state agencies like that are supposed to investigate, you know, retaliation or whatever, but they have like, you know, a 5% finding rate, you know, for the complainant. Whereas if you have an attorney, you know, who's looking at all your evidence and helping you structure this in a way, I mean, it's just, there's no comparison. So I hope that we move in the United States towards expanding the right to civil counsel. Because in California, we have it for eviction cases. If you're in danger of being evicted, you have the right to an attorney, even if you can't afford it. But I would love to see that expanded to whistleblowers, because whistleblowers are public servants, right? To report something that's affecting other people, you know, and we should have support, you know.
And I do. So Paul and I, and Ted, I don't know if you've seen it yet. We've, at Whistleblowers of America, we've worked on a legislative proposal, what I've been calling the Office of the Whistleblower Protection Advocate, so that we can get Congress to create a pipeline for us to be able to have an office that does a lot of work similar to what OVC is, where OVC provides grants to the states and municipalities and NGOs. We need something similar, because they're, and people, trust me, I've looked for a grant for whistleblowers, and I can't find anything that specifically says we will, you know, we'll give you grant money if you provide support and help whistleblowers. There's nothing in US in grants.gov or with any foundation. There's some kabuki dance things around it, but there's nothing that really says we'll help you support whistleblowers. And I mean, that just astounds me every time I try to look for, because trust me, I would be the first one signing up for a grant, with, you know, Paul probably knocking me over. But there's just nothing out there that helps us pay for these cases. And there are a couple of nonprofits that do have some funding or have pro bono legal assistance. They're very small and they're very select in the cases they can take. So where there are thousands of people who are banging on doors going, hey, I need an attorney, I'm a whistleblower, you know, most groups can only take maybe a couple, I don't even know if they can do 100 a year. That would be overwhelming. I mean, I know just for our little group how overwhelmed we can get trying to answer all the calls and follow up and remember everything and call everybody back. It's not always easy. So I think that I would love for us to push forward on some of this legislative ideas for there to be like an office of a whistleblower. I know they're trying to do the same thing in the UK. There's a legislative proposal. I don't know if you work with Georgina Halford Hall in the UK, and they've got the APPG there is working on legislation for there to be an office, because employment tribunals are probably just as terrible as some of our processes over here. I can't say that I'm authority. I've worked on a couple of cases now in the UK, but I haven't seen, and I've probably talked to people in about 30 other countries, I don't see anybody doing anything better or worse than what we're doing in the US. Well, maybe worse. I shouldn't say not worse, but I don't know that there's anybody that I would say, wow, we should emulate what that country is doing with whistleblower laws. in not just in policy, but also in practice.
Well, that's true. Well, even when you are more aware of what's going on, you have the most quantity of number of laws than any other country. You have protection
That's
of
not so great either, 'cause it's
common
confusing.
law in the constitution, statute. They don't work, as I see, as well as they should, but at least the awareness about the topic is there. In other
Mhm.
countries, it's not even a thing.
Yeah. No, I know it's a hodgepodge here of laws. But I'm happy. I know we're running over a little bit. I think you and I are scheduled to talk this week. I'd love to talk more about some of that as well. I did see one question about the conference, and maybe Paul can put the conference registration in the chat, because we've announced September's conference already. It's on Eventbrite. So if you're, see, he's so fast. If you're on Eventbrite, you can see that we've already announced our June conference, our September conference, and we'll get the next roundtable up and running so that we can do this again next month. So I appreciate everybody who's logged in, who has shared. Welcome to some of the new folks that I see are watching along. I appreciate everybody who shares. We really need to build this community, and I think we do that one connection at a time. So thank you very much, and I will be talking to most of you again soon, I'm sure. Have a good week. Have a good month. Bye-bye.